Good morning and welcome to the Knit Shift episode 61. My name is Laura and today is Monday, July 18th, 2016. Thank you for checking out my podcast today, whether you have been here before or you're checking me out for the first time. This is a knitting podcast where I talk about my life as a knitter and journalist in Southeast Virginia. I have a dog, I have a boyfriend, I live in a really hot part of the country, which is why I went with a tank top today. Show notes can be found at theknitshift.com. This episode is available on YouTube and iTunes, and I would love it if you subscribed in either location, that way you won't miss an episode. We do have a Ravelry group for the podcast. If you go to Ravelry in the Groups tab and search for The Knit Shift, you will find us. And finally, I am on Instagram as Laura Mahalski, so please do follow me over there. That's where I'm most active on social media. So it's episode 61, which I can't believe I've been doing this for more than a year now. It's kind of crazy. I'm really enjoying it, as always. I've mentioned recently that summer is a little bit hectic for me, and today I'm going to share a little bit about why it's been so hectic. So if journalism talk doesn't interest you, I will let you know at the end of the episode when you can just shut it off and say goodbye. But I think that what I'll talk about is of interest no matter what. I had the opportunity to go to a Navy homecoming and cover it for the paper this weekend, the news organization where I work. I shouldn't just say paper these days because really it's an online, we try to be digital first, we also print the paper, that kind of thing. Anyway, so today I have one work in progress to share with you, and I have a little bit of stash enhancement, aka yarns, if you're new here, and then we will talk about what I've been up to lately with my job. So first I wanted to tell you guys that I forgot to talk about this last week, but before I filmed a week ago, I did a little bit of cleanup on my whole knitting chair. I'm sitting on my couch right now. Normally I knit right over there. I have a chair and a half, which is one of those really wide chairs, like it's not a recliner, I can't think of the word. It's just a big oversized puffy chair, and it has an ottoman. And I keep a knitting basket beside it, which I kind of, all my works in progress, I try to keep in their own bag, and then I put all the bags in the basket. But I also have a little cardboard box of minis that I pick from when I'm knitting on my sock yarn blanket. And I have my, but the ottoman has kind of become a receptacle for knitting projects too, and stash enhancement and my yarn scale and just random empty project bags. So last week I went through the basket that sits beside the chair and I frogged a couple things that just were not working. I frogged a crocheted scarf I'd been working on for my brother. He asked me to make him a new scarf in his alma mater colors, red and gray. And so I started that, but it wasn't totally parallel. It was doing a little bit of the, I crocheted before I was a knitter, and I'm just not being consistent with how I change at the end of the rows. So I frogged it. Feel much better having done that. I also frogged a shawl in progress that I was knitting out of some yarn that I dyed myself at a class in Pittsburgh. It was mostly stuck in an asymmetrical shawl. Honestly, I can't even remember the pattern name right now. It looked great, but the edges were curling and I was not super in love with the process. So life is too short to knit something that isn't making you happy and will, continue to make you unhappy for a long time. It's one thing if it's like you're knitting something out of chunky yarn and it'll go really fast, or if it's a project that you're halfway done with, you can just kind of grin and bear it for the rest of it. But this was something that I was just, on the scale of 0 to 100% done, I was maybe 10% done, and I just thought, I don't want to keep knitting the shawl. So I frogged it. Don't know what I'll do with the yarn, but it's back in the stash. So I moved yarn from my yarn chair, from my knitting spot, back to the office/yarn room. It just felt really good to kind of declutter both physically and mentally, and I highly recommend it if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by your projects and don't know what to do. Oh, I frogged a sock that I had never shown on the podcast. If you have been watching for any length of time, you might remember in December I went to Pennsylvania for my brother's graduation from Penn State, and I lost a sock in progress somewhere in transit between where I live and Pennsylvania. I think it was somewhere in Maryland. Whether it fell out of my car, fell out in a restaurant, it became this huge mystery. So I started a new sock, because you don't just bring one project on a road trip, you bring like 3, because heaven forbid you lose something. I was prepared. So I started a new sock, and it was a patterned sock, which, again, if you've been watching any length of time, you know I don't knit a lot of pattern socks. I knit mostly vanilla socks. Oh, that's good. I'm drinking chai tea from my local tea shop in my Keep Calm and Carry Yarn mug, which was a gift from one of my dear friends. Perfect temperature. What was I saying? I started this sock. I was knitting an Ann Hansen pattern. It was a very simple textured rib type, but it was just not setting my world on fire, and it had literally been living in that basket over there since December. So I frogged it. It just felt very good to do. So with that said, let's get into my works in progress. Really, it's a singular work in progress this week. Work was really busy, which I'll talk about in a few. I started and ripped out a shawl that I talked about last week. I told you guys I was going to be starting the Sugar Plum shawl by Mina Phillip, and this is Hedgehog Fibers sock yarn in Ghost. I believe it's a 90-10 merino nylon. It's super soft, not a very high twist if you look really closely. Sorry, the camera is casting a shadow on it here. I'm using only natural light today. So unfortunately it's a little bit shadowy, but you can see. And my cakes of yarn are this one is much pinker than this one. So I was alternating skeins, everything was great. But the pattern is written out, and I'm finding that I really prefer my patterns to be charted. It's like the main repeat is a 10-row repeat, and I kept losing my place, not just which row I was on, but where I was in the row. It's a beautiful pattern, and I might try to knit it again, but I think it was all up here. I was having a mental block, so I really did start it 4 times and had to rip it out 4 times. So that was a bummer, because I really want to use this yarn. I really want a nice, I consider this kind of a neutral shawl for me. I knit a lot of bold stuff, so I would really like something really mild and pretty and lovely to wear in the fall. I don't think I said what kind of tea this was. This is chai American tea. It's the perfect cinnamon sweetness. I love it so much. I've been buying more and more each time I restock my tea, and so I currently have 8 ounces of this, which is, if you know tea, 8 ounces of tea is a lot of tea. So so good. I have not had any caffeine today, by the way, till now. I got up before 7 a.m., which is really early for me on my day off, and in general, because I do work until 10 or 11 p.m. I'm generally up by 8, but getting up at like 6:30, 6:45 was rough. We had to take my car to get its yearly inspection this morning, and so I had to get it there before 7, or right at 7 when it opened, so my boyfriend could give me a ride back, and then he had to go up to school to study. So I was on the struggle bus this morning, and I don't know why it's 11 a.m. and I haven't had any tea until now, but there you have it. I'm a pretty peppy person. I don't really need to have tea or coffee. I don't drink coffee, period, really, except like iced coffees sometimes. But I'm not someone who needs caffeine to get going in the morning, but today was one of those days when I was really struggling, and I almost went back to sleep when I got back from the car, the Firestone, where we dropped my car off. Anyway, you probably didn't need to know all that, but anyway, I'm a little tired, and I'm trying to compensate with tea. So let's get into the works in progress. I have just the one because of said shawl problems, and that is my blanket, my sock yarn blanket. I am up to about 140 squares overall. It is the width I want it, and now I'm just making it the length that I want it. So I basically, the rows, the diamonds are, the bottom row is 10, the next one up is 9. So I'm on a row of 10 right now, and here is what I've been knitting this week. There's this one. I don't know the colorway, but I can tell by the yarn that this is Socks That Rock Lightweight. This is Lammy Toes Moon Pie Merino in the Bad Egg colorway. This is one of my favorites. I knit a sock head hat out of this pretty recently. I wish this would focus better. There we go. I knit this. This was a mini I picked up at SAF this year. I don't remember the name of the yarn dyer, but it's really pretty. This is Western Sky Knits. This was a mini from Sylvia, who was visiting the area. She's a podcast viewer, so hi Sylvia. She brought me some minis from her local dyers. I think this was Western Sky Knits. Now I'm doubting myself. This is Hazel Knits Artisan Sock, which is a merino nylon blend, and this is the colorway Nymph. If you watched last week's episode, you will remember I showed you a shawl knit out of this yarn. This is Opal Flower Power, which is a discontinued line of yarn. I knit my grandma socks out of these. And this was another mini from Sylvia. So I knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've knit 7 squares, so I have 3 more to finish this row. I'm tentatively planning to square this off and see how I feel about it, like as a modest throw, but for that I would probably need at least 40 more squares. But just the idea of that and possibly having just a goal in sight is really making me motivated to work on this. So it is slowly but surely growing, and I am knitting this on size 3 DPNs. The details of how I do my blocks is on my Ravelry page. You will see that I have a kind of a stockinette line down the middle of each block, and I did that on purpose, and details about it are on my project page. So there you have it, little blanket all folded up. And sadly, that's my only work in progress, you guys. I wish I had more to show you, but that whole stopping and starting on the shawl really put a dent in my knitting plans this week. Okay, I'm glad I have the big mug, but I'm already halfway done with this. Hi Grace. I have there's windows directly on the other side of the camera, and I have the shades up, and so the dog has a perfect view of our driveway and the neighboring apartment building's yard, so she kind of likes to stand there and observe. She would rather be out on the deck observing, but at least now she has a fully undisturbed view of our backyard area. Not even a yard, just back of our building. Okay, so what else do I have to show you? I have 2 bits of yarn. I have yarns today. I have a little bit of stash enhancement. Last week I cannot even remember why. I think it was just a busy news week. I was working a lot. I saw that Simply Socks Yarn was having is it Simply Sock Yarn or Simply Socks Yarn? I can't remember, but it's a yarn store based out of Indiana, out of Fort Wayne to be specific, and they were having a sale on some self-patterning yarns, and I'm a sucker for when that kind of stuff goes on sale, because, you know, I'm willing to pay full price. I mean, I always love a deal, but I'm always happy to pay full price for like hand-dyed yarn, but when it comes to stuff that is from a large company or machine made, basically, I am a-okay with getting that on sale, because it's you know, I would just rather support a small business in general. So they had some great lines that were on sale. They had this, which was the Forest Color Online Super Sock Forest Color. It's an 75/25 virgin wool polyamide, so it's perfect for socks, and you can see that it'll stripe up in brown, black and white speckles, yellow, blue, and red. And I'm very excited about this. There's what the whole yarn line looks like, and mine is this one right there. So I'm very excited. This could be a nice man sock. And so that was the online desert color line, and it's colorway 1907. And the other one I got I really love, and I think this is going to become socks for myself. This is online Super Sock Desert color, and again 75/25 virgin wool polyamide. My pair is the second one up right here by my finger, so very excited for this. You can see that it's really pretty heathers, kind of a rainbow heathered appearance, which I'm very excited about. Look at all those pretty blues and greens. Oh, that's gonna be fun. So they were about $8 or $9 a skein instead of like 15, so I was very pleased about that. And they're each like 450 yards fingering weight, so that it'll be very easy to get a pair of socks. I was going to tell you a little bit about some trips I have coming up. I haven't talked about my travel schedule in a little while, and I just added something to the mix. So I am going to the Outer Banks of North Carolina next weekend, like 4 days from now, really, not even next weekend. Sounds much further away than it is. My friend Lennis, who's a knitter, she and I are going to her family's cabin, which will be really, really fun. And I guess technically it's not in the Outer Banks, it's almost in the Outer Banks, but we are going to go to the Outer Banks, and we're going to have lunch at one of our favorite restaurants, and we will probably hit up the local yarn store, Knitting Addiction, which is fantastic if you've ever been to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And I'm really excited for that. So that'll be great. We're just going to be there for a couple days knitting, maybe doing a little swimming. It'll be super relaxing and a very well-deserved trip away for both of us. Then a month from now, in fact, a month from today, I don't know, about a month from now, I will be going to Texas with my boyfriend. We're going to visit his family. And in the middle of the trip, we will go on a trip, just the two of us, a trip within a trip. We will drive to Austin, Texas. His family's in the Fort Worth area, so it's about a 3-hour drive. So I've been to Fort Worth and Dallas for the first time last year, and so I'm looking forward to going back, but I did not get to go really outside of Fort Worth, so I'm excited to go to Austin. We're kind of planning a trip within the trip within the trip, and we might drive from Austin into a town kind of in the middle of nowhere called Comfort that has a really lovely yarn shop with a lot of cool indie dyers, so we might do that. We might go to San Antonio to check out the Riverwalk, which everyone raves about. I have never, honestly, going to Texas in August does not intrigue me because it's going to be redonkulously hot. But it'll be well worth it to see his family and just have a little break. As if you've been watching, you know that he is changing careers and is in school, and we have like a 2-week window between the end of his summer classes and the beginning of fall, and fall will be his last semester. Hooray! So we just have a really short window to go see his mom, so I'm looking forward to it, just to have a little break and have a little vacation. Then, of course, my girlfriends and I are going to SAF in October, which I'm really excited about. It's at the end of the month. And in December, Josh and I will be going to New York City. We're going to celebrate his graduation from college. Josh is a very no-fuss, doesn't want a big deal made kind of man. He does not want to walk at graduation, which I totally understand. And he and I will be leaving on the morning of graduation and going to New York City. We have an Airbnb rental for a few days, and we're going to do a little sightseeing. There will be yarn tourism. There will be delicious foods. We will see a friend of mine who lives in the city. Overall, it'll just be a really well-deserved break for him because he's been working so hard the past few years with studying and accounting and internship, all that kind of stuff. So I'm super proud of him, and I can't wait for December to get here so he can graduate and then start his full-time job in January. And then finally, I just planned another little trip for February at the end of the month with my mom and dad. I don't get to do a lot with just my mom and dad, but I feel like I've said this a lot, but as previously discussed on the podcast, I went to Pittsburgh and I met up with my mom and dad, and we went to the Pittsburgh Knit and Crochet Festival in early March of this year, and my mom and I took classes and had a good time shopping, and it was so much fun. So we are going to get to go almost a year later. We will be going to Savannah, Georgia. My parents live in Ohio. They're going to visit some family in Florida and then drive from Florida to Georgia. My mom is a super huge quilter, and there's a quilting convention and a quilt show in Savannah toward the end of February. And a friend of mine will be teaching at the convention, and I would love to meet her. I've never gotten to meet her. She creates beautiful, beautiful, meaningful quilts, and I'm hoping we can see her. And we are also going to go to Athens, Georgia to see I have family there. My mom's oldest sister and two of my cousins live there, and one of my cousins owns a bookshop in Athens, and it's an amazing bookshop, Avid Bookshop. If you ever are near Athens, Georgia, please go and tell Janet I said hi. There's my shameless plug, but it really is a beautiful store, and it's a great independent bookshop, and it's really thriving as a part of the community there. So I'm going to drive to Georgia in late February alone. It'll be busy season at Josh's job as an accountant, so he can't come. So I planned it that I will drive partway one night. Savannah is about, I don't know, an 8-hour drive, 7-hour drive. But I'm going to drive through Raleigh and Cary, and I'm going to visit a couple yarn shops there. Warm and Fuzzy and Downtown Knits Warm and Fuzzy is in Cary, and Downtown Knits is in, I think, Apex, North Carolina. So I'm going to visit those, and then I will keep on driving and spend the night probably a little bit north of the Georgia border in South Carolina, and then I'll keep driving and meet my parents in Savannah the next day. And we'll be in Savannah for 2 nights, and then we will go to Athens for a night and see family, and then I will be on my way back home. So that'll be really, really fun. I'm super excited for it. I'm gonna consider it a birthday present to myself because my birthday's will be a couple weeks ahead of that. So that is really exciting. I love thinking about trips and the chance to get away, and even if it's just honestly, my life is so crazy right now, and Josh is so busy that we went to see a movie this weekend, and that was super exciting because we haven't seen a movie in about 6 months. So it's been a pretty low-key time around here lately. So I'm very looking forward to the next 6 to 8 months. So that's all of my travel plans. I do want to talk a little bit about my job. So if that doesn't interest you, feel free to shut it off here. I won't be offended, and I will see you soon. So I don't talk a lot about my job, but this was kind of a cool week, so I thought I would share some details with you. I'm an editor at this news organization. I plan and I execute the paper every day. Basically, I look ahead to what's coming down the pipeline and help plan for it. And I also have been trying to take a more active role in planning some digital stuff as well, because really that's where journalism is going. So I'm kind of a conductor of a very, very diverse orchestra, I guess you could say, because I'm looking at daily stuff and I'm planning ahead, and I'm looking at the possibility of a Facebook Live, and I manage interns, and I manage a night reporter. And so I do a lot. So this week was a little weird. Tuesday night, we had a little bit of a big news situation break. The night reporter was out at covering something, and we actually had an intern working that evening training to be a web producer, but there were some protests going on at a local city council meeting, so the intern went to the council meeting, and so both the intern and the night reporter were out at stuff. And I got a tip that we had written about had been a shooting. 3 people were shot in a part of Norfolk, and we got a tip that the shooting was captured on a Facebook Live video. If you aren't familiar, Facebook Live is a way to broadcast live video from your phone, and your friends are notified and they can kind of tune in and you can interact. The person filming can like interact with commenters, and then it's available to replay even after the video is done. What made this extra weird, beyond the fact that it was a shooting captured on Facebook Live, it wasn't the shooter that was doing the video, that wasn't doing the filming, it was the victim. And so we got a hold of this video. So anyway, there was no reporter around. So I wrote that story, which ended up going on the front page of the paper. And it was a really big, huge, popular story online. And it ended up being a story that kind of broke and went national. We had the video first. It was just really kind of crazy. So I was at work until midnight Tuesday night. And then on Wednesday morning, I went to the homecoming of an aircraft carrier. Now, my job is all about planning. It's not so much covering news, unless, like the night before, I was thrown into a situation that you do the job and you get it done, basically. But I have had such a crazy time at work lately. I was planning the coverage for the homecoming, and I had the idea to do a poster of the homecoming, so I had to arrange for that, arrange the space, all that kind of stuff. The photographer, we sent a helicopter to capture a photo from above of the carrier coming home, but I was also planning to do a Facebook Live video from the homecoming. So I was going to maybe do the video, but then it just worked out that other people were going to do the video, so I went to the homecoming and I did a little bit of Twitter coverage and tweeting out photos and video and kind of feeding the website with some early material before the ship got home. So I have never been to a military homecoming. My brother's in the military, and when he got home from a deployment, I was not able to be there because it was in Ohio, and it was a situation where it's really short notice, so I couldn't be there. So it was awesome being at this Navy pier, just from a personal perspective. You know, I'm there as a journalist, but an aircraft carrier, if you're not familiar, is the biggest ship in the U.S. Navy fleet. There are about 5,000 to 6,000 sailors on board and Marines, and it's just massive. People say it's a floating skyscraper, and they're not wrong, because it's just, you don't realize just how big it is till you're standing next to it and you're craning your neck. So it was very, very cool. So the whole strike group was coming home, so there were about 4 or 5 destroyers and a cruiser that came home first. And so we got there, we got to the pier, and we could see ships coming and going to piers that were further down, further in from where we were. So that was really cool. So I shared some video, I was interviewing people, I got to tweet out photos. There were lots of cute kids, lots of funny signs. One woman made a little flat laminated version, like a photo of her husband, and took it around with her on the deployment and wore it while she ran a marathon, like that kind of stuff. So it was really cool. And there was even a tent for new moms, and not just people giving birth to their first child. It was if you had a child while your husband was deployed, you got to be in this tent. And the dads of new babies are among the first to come off the aircraft carrier. So basically, the way that the carrier comes home, and there are sailors manning the rails, which means they are on, and it's a very long ship, so there's sailors on the edges of the ships, and you can see them, and they're wearing their whites, and it's a really long process to dock an aircraft carrier. It took more than an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And they have to not only tie it up, but they have to attach the brow, the walkways, to the ship. So it took a really long time, and I just so happened to end up, I kind of hovered near the front where the moms and the VIP tents were, and I was not in the bleachers with everyone. And so I wanted to be there when the first few people off the ship came off. So the admirals came off, and there was a little press gaggle, and there were the first kisses. Basically, the first 5 or 6 sailors off the ship, they have drawings to announce so that you can be the first one off and, you know, kiss your significant other, that kind of thing. So that's kind of cool. So that happened, and then all the new dads come off. So I was near the walkway where all the dads were coming off, and it was overwhelming because there were about 80 babies born during the deployment, and there were moms and babies everywhere. And as these sailors come off the ship, they're like running. They're running to their significant others and the babies, and they're hugging and they're crying, and then there's one over here hugging and crying and one over here, and it was so overwhelming. So I ended up shooting some photos, and I even made a video, which I will link to. I'll link to it. It's on my employer's YouTube channel. But I produced a video, my first ever video for the paper, just a little video story about this one sailor I happened to film meeting his daughter. And I met one sailor. His baby was so tiny, and I said, "How old is the baby?" And he said, "My wife gave birth 11 days ago." And the baby was in camo, and it was just so sweet. And I met another couple who the wife gave birth the night before the ship deployed back in November. And because, I mean, she was back home with family in Oklahoma, and he was already on the ship in Norfolk, so there was just no way for him to see the baby. So he literally had to leave for that deployment knowing he wouldn't see his baby that had just been born for 8 months. And I think that would be the hardest of all. You know, it's one thing to have the baby and, you know, 2 weeks out and oh my gosh, but that sailor missed, you know, the first 8 months of his baby's life. So it was really, it was a really exciting day for me as a journalist, and our Facebook Live video was so popular. I think it has about 300,000 views right now. The video I made of by the way, say hi to Grace. The video I made of the sailor meeting his daughter, it was shared both on YouTube and on Facebook directly, and on Facebook it has about 40,000 views, which is really exciting. And I came home from the deployment with a wicked sunburn, which you can, the homecoming. You can see my neck has this line here, but the really bad spot is like right back here. And of course now you can't see it because Gracie's here, but my back right shoulder, there was very little relief from the sun. And I wore sunscreen, and I reapplied it 5 times, but it was about 105 degrees on that pier. The only relief was that there was a little bit of a breeze coming from the river, but in general, boy, it was really freaking hot. Just awful. That was the only complaint I have about the whole thing, is that there was no relief from the sun, and every sunscreen I applied, it just melted right off of me. It did so little. So it was, yeah, that was no fun. But finally my neck does not hurt anymore, and I feel like it's gonna peel, but yeah, there, now you can really see. So you can see that lovely line, and again, pardon the bra strap too, but you can see that line on my neck. But yeah, and the backs of my arms were yeah, you can still see the arms are really sunny. So yeah, so that was my big adventure on Wednesday. And then Thursday we have our high school journalism camp. One of my colleagues runs a high school journalism workshop for 2 weeks for high schoolers who are interested. I spoke to them about ethics, and you know, we did like a little ethics quiz about why you cannot change quotes, why you can't change what people say in direct quotes. You know, you can't ask people to pose again for photos, that kind of thing. So it was just really a good week for me professionally, and really gratifying overall. So I was really happy for my weekend and relaxing, and just knitting and enjoying the peace and quiet these 2 days. So yeah, so that's a little bit about my job and how it was kind of interesting this week. And I think that's everything. So if all goes to plan, I will be back next week, and I will see you soon. But otherwise, have a fantastic week, happy knitting, and take care.